Welcome to Camera Settings. John is going to teach you what is the difference between shooting RAW versus JPEG, all about formatting your cards, how to choose white balance, what are drive modes and custom functions, and how to update and monitor your firmware. This is where you learn the brains of the system and everything that is customizable to work for you and your photography.
There's a variety of other camera settings that are also very important beyond those critical shutter speed, aperture, ISO settings, and that's what I'd like to talk about in this section. The first and most important setting that I want to talk about is the file type that you record to with a digital camera. One option is JPEG settings, and JPEGs are the most common type of digital photo we have these days, and that's because they're universally read by all computers. If we want to upload a photograph, if we want to email a photograph, a JPEG setting is a very good setting for it because it's compressed, it gives us very good information for the size that it is. But recording it in the camera has some issues with it, and I would like to explain those here. A JPEG is started with original information from the sensor. It then goes through processing, which means the color space, white balance, the whole look of the image is determined right then at the time of processing. And then it goes through compression in order to have a small file size that can have a lot of images on a memory card. It compresses the amount of colors, and so it starts throwing away information that it thinks you may not need. And then we end up with the universal JPEG image, which, as I say, is a very convenient image, and all photographers work with JPEG images in one sense or another. So it's a very handy tool. The problem is we're throwing away information that we, the photographer, may want to have later on. The other option is shooting a RAW format. And what this does is it records the original information from the sensor. It does need to go through a converter in order to turn that into an actual digital file. It then adds white balance to it, which is removable, which is kind of nice, and I'll show you more about that in a minute. And with all of that, you end up with a RAW image. It has all the original information, and the best analogy here is the traditional days of film, back when we had film and prints. You'd never go to the drugstore to pick up your images and go, well, these negatives are kind of interesting, but I don't need them. You'd throw them away. You wanted that original information, and that's true with photographers today. They want to keep the original information so that they can make adjustments to their photographs with the raw image. If you have a raw image, you can adjust it, get everything looking just the way you want it, and then create a JPEG of it and send that off to wherever it needs to go. If you have a JPEG, you can't go back and make a RAW out of it. So with the raw image, the downside is not everyone can look at raw images on their computer or whatever program they might have. There's only a few programs that work with raw images. Most all cameras come with free software, and there's a variety of other software by other companies that will read raw images. And so you're going to have to work with some software on your computer in order to look at the image, to adjust the image, or to make a JPEG version of it. And it takes a little bit more time, but when you want better quality, this is that little bit of time that you have to put in to get that extra quality out of it. And so if you are serious about your work and you want to be able to make exposure adjustments after the fact, the raw image will give you much more latitude for making changes than a JPEG. The JPEGs can be very quick and easy, and they're pretty good straight out of the camera, but the RAW is going to enable you to do much more with your images long-term down the road. So that is what I recommend shooting, and having the appropriate software for doing that as well. Now, the way that you make these changes is in the menu system of your camera. Now, every camera has its own different menu system, and so you're going to have to look in your own camera and find out where the file type is decided. Sometimes it's under image quality or file quality, something like that. And there will be options for recording JPEGs of different sizes. Some people want to shoot small JPEGs because they don't even have a computer, and they want to do it straight on the camera, and they know what their final image is going to be. Some cameras will offer you different options in RAWs as far as small, medium, and large. And in general, you're going to want to have the largest RAW possible unless you know very specifically what the final usage of that photograph is. If you're going to take a picture and you know it's going to be in a catalog and it's going to be relatively small, you could probably shoot that on small RAW and not be a problem at all, as long as you know that you don't want to make a large print of it. Now, one of the things about the RAW image that is a little frustrating, but it's just the nature of doing business in photography, is that each of the camera manufacturers has their own version of RAW. And so if you have software from Canon to read Canon cameras, it's not going to read the RAW image files from Nikon. And so each company has their own software and their own file type system for working with. And that can be a bit of a problem, and so that's why a lot of photographers use a third-party software that can read all the different brands of manufacturers. Different camera companies will have different ways of setting and listing their information. So you're going to have to check your camera and your camera's menu for more specific information about what your camera says. And so some cameras will give you graphics, some cameras will give you words, but in general, shooting a straight RAW image is going to give you the highest quality, most versatile image in the long run. As you store images on your memory card, they get stored in little folders on your camera. And as you shoot up a bunch of photos and then you delete those because you've downloaded them and you start shooting photos again, there's going to be a new folder of images. And you're going to go through that same process again. And what's going to happen after a long period of time is that you're going to end up with a bunch of ghost folders on your file, on your memory card. And there's going to be a data directory, and there's going to be some other things that the computer is working with on your memory card, and that may cause a communication error between your camera and the memory card. And so the safest thing to do is to reformat the memory card on a regular basis. This deletes the photos, deletes the file directory, deletes the empty folders on there, and basically sets it back to new condition and establishes a line of communication with the brand of camera you have. And so they are sometimes kind of brand specific in their communication. And so if a friend gave you an old memory card that they didn't use anymore, you'd probably want to reformat it so that it can work in your camera properly before you just started shooting photos. The drive mode controls what happens when you press all the way down on the shutter release. The first option is single shooting. This means that when you press all the way down, you're just going to take one photograph. And that's going to be perfectly fine for most portrait situations. Some cameras will offer a quiet option if you want to reduce the sound of the noise. There's also a remote option where you can either get a wireless remote or even use a mobile device with a Wi-Fi system hooked up. But for the most part, single mode is going to work just fine. Next up is continuous shooting, and this is where the camera will continually take photographs as long as you leave your finger down on the shutter release. And this is going to be good for action or fast-moving situations, which isn't all that common, but may happen depending on the type of action you're photographing. If you have somebody coming towards you and you want a whole series of photographs because you're not sure which position you want the body in for the final photograph, the continuous mode is fantastic for that. Some cameras will offer a low speed, some will offer a high speed. It depends on how fast that camera can particularly shoot. Finally, there is a self-timer mode. If you wanted to get in the picture yourself or you were shooting a night shot that you didn't want to vibrate the camera, you would use that. Not very common in portrait photography. White balance deals with the color of light that you are recording under and what color you want in the photograph. Your cameras do not instinctively know what color the light source is. It tends to do very good under natural conditions, sunlight, but there are a number of artificial lights that we use to illuminate our subject that are very different than sunlight when it comes to the color temperature or the color of the light. And so your camera offers several different modes for different types of scenarios. There's usually going to be 3 modes for natural lighting, like daylight, cloudy, and shade. And the one that's most different than everything on the scale here is tungsten light. And so the tungsten lights that we have in our homes, a lot of times our living rooms and so forth, will be tungsten, and it's a very orange light. And if you photograph under tungsten light and you don't make an adjustment with your white balance, people's skin tones will be very, very orange, and everything around them will be very orange, and it looks a bit awkward. So if you put your camera in the tungsten mode, things that are white will be white. So if you hold up a white sheet of paper, it'll look normally white. And so you want to set the white balance according to the type of lights that you are working under. Now this seems like it would be a bit of a pain, and if you had to adjust it on every single shoot, yeah, it's just one extra setting that you would have to make. There are a couple of other modes over here. One of the options is auto white balance. And this is where the camera will automatically look at the highlight information and try to determine what color the light source is and automatically fix it for you. And I actually use auto white balance quite a bit of the time. Not all of the time, but quite a bit of the time because of two good reasons. Number one, it does a pretty good job on most cameras in most cases. And number two, I shoot RAW. And if you remember back when we talked about RAW and JPEG, one of the advantages of RAW is that you can adjust the white balance after the fact. And so it's very easy if your colors aren't quite right with a RAW image to fix it later. So it's a system that works pretty good for general photography. Now many cameras will also have a couple of other options. One option is a Kelvin setting where you can set the specific Kelvin temperature, and this is the Kelvin scale here, and it measures light at different temperatures and different colors. And if you want to be at a particular Kelvin temperature, whether it's 6,000 or 2,000, you could set that in your camera if you want to. If you had multiple cameras shooting, that would be one way of making sure they were all shooting exactly the same. Another option is where you can calibrate using a white sheet of paper. If you are under unusual lighting, but you don't know what the color is, you could photograph a white sheet of paper and your camera would allow you to set the white balance according to the light that it sees on that piece of paper. You're going to need to check your own camera and camera's instruction manual on exactly how to do it with your camera, but it's something that is quite common on most systems out there. Now, as I mentioned, one of the factors that I liked about shooting RAW is that you can adjust color after the fact. And so when you get the right color, you generally know it. And when you look at your image and the color is wrong, you will also probably know it because it's typically going to work in a yellow to blue spectrum. Either it's too yellow or it's too blue. Now, once again, this is a matter a little bit up to interpretation because you can choose the one that you like, you can choose the one that is most accurate, and sometimes those aren't the same. And so it depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to show fabric and textures to be the true color that they're supposed to be? Or are you trying to create a certain feel in your photograph? And so there's not an exact rule on how you should set your white balance all the time. But starting it off at neutral to start with is a good place to begin. So one of the things, as I said, I mentioned about shooting RAW is that you can adjust after the fact. And so if you take a photograph and whether you set the white balance incorrectly or the camera set it for you incorrectly, you can take that image and that slider on that temperature scale, slide it between the blue and the yellow and find out where the happy medium where they look correct and the image looks the way that you want it to, and you're not doing any damage to your original RAW image when you do this. You can do it to a lesser degree with JPEG images, but you are in some senses damaging the JPEG when you are doing that. So it's easy and non-damaging to the RAW image. Throughout your camera, there's a bunch of other settings we want to talk about. I talked a little bit about the formatting the memory card. And in your cameras, kind of in the back end of the menu system, is going to be an option for formatting your card. And this is something that I like to do before every important shoot so that my card has the maximum amount of space and there is nothing cluttered on there that might cause a communication error. So by formatting your cards, they will actually last longer. It's healthy for the card and good to be reset in that manner. Another feature that you might want to have set right is the date and time. It's a minor little thing and it's not the worst if it's off, but it's very convenient when it's held on and you're trying to go back and look at the order of photographs or reconstruct particular events or when did we do this versus that. Having that set right, I think, is one of those little things that's nice to have done properly in your camera. Now, the custom functions on your camera can be very lengthy. There is a lot of these on many of the modern cameras, especially some of the higher end cameras. And these are features, it's beyond the scope of this class to go into, but it allows you to customize the camera the way you like it to work. You can change which dial does what feature on your camera. You can change which direction the dial works, when something turns on, when something turns off. And it's not something that you're going to go in and spend a lot of time on a regular basis on, but it's something that you can really get the camera set to the way that you like it to work. And you want your camera to be really an extension of yourself. And so when you get your camera all customized for yourself, you're happy, you pick it up, and it's just working exactly the way you want it. So I encourage you to go through your custom functions, learn about what they are, and get your camera adjusted, tweaked, and set exactly the way that you like it to be done. Now, the firmware in your camera is the software that runs the operation of the menu system and how your camera processes images, and almost everything your camera does electronically in the camera itself. Now, like software on our computers, they have bugs from time to time and they have updates from time to time. But because most cameras are not automatically connected up to the internet, you need to go to your respective manufacturer's website and look up your camera to see if there is new firmware available. Now, on many cameras, after they come out, they figure out a way to fix a problem or improve it in some way, and they come out with new firmware and they'll post it on their website and they'll give you explanations on how to get it onto your camera. And I'm not going to go through the full details for all the cameras, but the general idea is there's two basic operations. First, you need to download, and that's going to happen no matter what. Some cameras will have you hooked directly up to your computer and it will load the software to your camera. In other cases, you'll download to a memory card, put the memory card in the camera, open up the firmware setting, and then load up the new firmware on the camera. And this is free. This is not something the manufacturers are charging for, so there's no cost other than the time and effort to do it to keep your camera up to date with the latest features and the latest fixes. And on some cameras I have seen they have added very notable significant features for free months or years after the camera has come out, and that can be a very handy thing. And I say take advantage of free stuff. That's a good idea. So that's your section on camera settings. There's a lot of little things that can add up to be important. So go through that menu system. I know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but walk through it step by step and make sure you get all of those set the way that you want them to, because you're not going in there all the time. You want to be able to pick up your camera, make those important adjustments with shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, knowing that everything else is set exactly the way you want it. So get in there, get it customized, and get it set for yourself. All right, we've been talking about all the technical settings on portrait photography here, and this is one of the first most important things you need to do is you need to take care of you. You need to take care of what's in your hands and what you're controlling when you're taking a portrait photograph. But there are many things other than this that also have to be gotten right. So other areas that you're going to probably want to investigate and get smarter and better at is with your subject. I'm thinking about composition, posing, wardrobe, background. All of that stuff is going to be very important in a portrait photograph. We've only touched on the technical sides of it here. Now, the third area that you need to get really good at is with lighting. This is going to deal with natural light and flash and can be hugely critical on any portrait photograph. And so this is the completion of the start of your portrait photography. We got the technical side right, you got the camera down. Now it's time to start learning more about your subject and your lighting. And so I encourage you to seek out that information, learn it, practice it, and you will become a much better portrait photographer. If you're interested in more about the other things that I do, I have a number of books available, and these are available at all the places that you can find books online and in stores. I do have a number of other classes, and you can find these through my website, which is johngringo.com. I also have tours if you're interested in traveling and taking photos at the same time. I have designed a number of different tours that go to various places around the world with photographers in mind. If you would like to catch up with me on social media, I am of course on Facebook and Instagram, and you can connect up with me there. And the one-stop all is of course just going to my website at johngringo.com, and you can find out more about what I'm doing there. So thank you very much, and I wish you the best in your photography.
Now what we're going to do is talk about picture style in our camera settings. This is a great way to alter the look of your photographs as you are photographing them. Just be aware if you are shooting in RAW mode, which is the largest RAW file you can capture on these cameras, you do have to have RAW processing software or Photoshop to process them. If you're shooting in RAW, what I'm about to do does not change the RAW file. So even though the image will change color on the back of the camera, it's not going to change the file. If you choose to shoot in a high contrast black and white, it is still going to come out color when you open them on your computer. However, if you are not shooting RAW and you're shooting straight to a JPEG, that is going to change the JPEG. Okay, so if you shoot it in black and white, you're going to open it and it's going to be in black and white. So RAW, it will never change. JPEG, it will absolutely shoot exactly as you're seeing it. Also, if you choose to shoot a video clip in black and white and you change the contrast settings and make it really gorgeous, then of course the video will be in black and white. Now, why do I do this? Mostly to get the look that I want straight out of camera, or simply because I shoot RAW, to see the finished result on the back of my camera as it was intended to shoot. So don't make the mistake of leaving it in JPEG or video and changing the color, only in RAW. So I'm going to show you a couple of techniques that I love. One is if I go to picture style, you can see that I have selected from all of these selections, and what I've chosen is neutral. I have chosen the most neutral color palette, very little contrast for my color photograph. So I'm going to take my portrait to show you. Put a little bit of fan in this here just to give it a little bit of lift and movement. And we are going to shoot this here. Now, as you can see, my settings are way off. I'm at ISO 400, so I'm going to take my ISO to 100. I'm going to take my aperture 7.1, my shutter speed 1/125th of a second. Let's try again. And there's my beautifully lit shot. Now that is a neutral color palette. I am going to now go into picture style, and I'm going to select something a little bit different. I'm going to choose portrait, and I'm going to go into the portrait setting, and I'm going to shift around the settings, pump up my contrast a little bit, take down my saturation a stop, and I'm going to play with the look that I want. Now I have selected portrait, and when I take this photograph, you're going to see a distinct change in the color. Let's have a look at the two of them side by side. Just shooting warmer with a little extra pump in contrast has given me an entirely different look. Now, what if I go in and I want to shoot a series in black and white? I will choose monochrome. And when I go into my monochrome, I'm just going to have a look at the setting for monochrome to see where the contrast is. I'm going to give my monochrome a little pump of contrast, 2 stops. Okay, and I'm not going to change anything else. I love this look. And let's try and shoot the same shot in a gorgeous contrast monochrome. Now that's absolutely beautiful straight out of camera. As you can see, I have monochrome, high contrast with a slight desaturation, and then my beautiful neutral file so I can build my color. Now, why would you do this? If I was to shoot a video and I didn't have the editing capability, or I wanted to do very basic grading, I can do that straight out of camera. I can also match my stills to the exact style of the film that I'm shooting. How does this work? Let me show you. What I'm going to do now is I am going to take a little video clip. So I am going to turn off my strobe, and I'm going to go to natural light. I'm going to open my aperture nice and wide to let lots of light in, and I'm going to lift my ISO to 400. We are using the natural ambient light in the room, and we are also using the constant keynotes above. As you can see, I've got lots of shadow, so I'm just going to pop a little reflector under there. That is magnificent. Okay, so first of all, we could take this as a still just to see what we're getting. I'm going to show you how I take a little video here. So I want to make sure my exposure is absolutely perfect, and then I'm going to direct Kathleen. So I want your eyes down. Okay, beautiful. And I'm going to press record, and then I'm going to direct her. Stay looking at the camera, eyes up to the camera. Beautiful. Hold. A tiny little light smile. Gorgeous. Tiny little tilt back this way. Beautiful big smile. Fall into it. Big laugh. Gorgeous. Beautiful. There you go. Good girl. Now when I play back my clip, you can see that I have this beautiful slow motion. As she comes up, her eyes are going to connect to the camera. I'm directing her to move and smile. And if you're creating video, you can create graded color video straight out of your camera. Now remember, this cannot go back to color. This has to stay in black and white. JPEG will come out black and white. RAW files will always reset to color. It is a great way to play, experiment with lots of different tones straight out of camera.